Tonight's topic is the top 3 habits of extraordinary leaders. And I really want to focus on what separates extraordinary leaders from effective managers, because most people, would agree that there's a difference between, good leaders and managers or average managers. But what really gets you to that extraordinary elite levels? How do you go from even being a highly effective manager to this elite level? And whether you believe that leaders are born or they're made, or you can develop into one, either way is equally effective, regardless of what you've been told. There's a common myth out there that there's natural born leaders, and whether it's children on the playground, they show these leadership traits early on in life. Well, that is true. Some people are born with some better leadership qualities, but you can just as easily learn this. You can teach it. You can implement the same strategies and psychologies that the extraordinary leaders use, because that's really what it comes down to. It's just about strategies. Whether it was they were fortunate enough to be born into a family of origin that were great leaders, or had great mentors early on in life. Everyone has different circumstances, but when someone has figured out how to do something well, someone else can learn how to do it as well. So, I'm really going to focus on the psychology side of things for this webinar, and I'm going to give you the top 3 things that I believe that you can start implementing right away, start developing right away, and you'll notice a pretty drastic improvement in your leadership skills. So this isn't going to be just leadership 101. We could do that, but this is not that. There are resources galore out on the internet. You can find, great articles, other training programs that go into some of these specifics, whether it's they're visionary, they're great communicators, they care deeply. So many different things that have been documented over the years that tell you what a great leader is. But how do you really work on this for yourself? How do you really use a tool, to be to have some of these traits and qualities? That's what we're going to be focused on, and where I'd like to start off with kind of a inevitable you 101 basics here, some things to set the stage for some of these points I'm going to be making. And but really, this is a really important point, because this is the first step, really. This isn't even one of the 3 things I'm going to give you, but it's going to lead into those. But the first step that you have to understand is that because most people believe that the mind is this mystery, intangible, messy, hard to figure out. People are hard to figure out. And even in a crisis, they're even more difficult. Well, that is not true. That is a myth. People are not hard to understand. People are not hard to figure out. It really is precise logic. You can really understand people even greater, especially within crisis moments, because psychology, when you really look at it and you really understand it, is very rules based. Very rarely will people function or operate outside of their psychology or their patterns, their habits. And when you know someone deeply, when you know that, people aren't messy, that this is logic, this is predictable, it becomes very easy to understand. And so when you think about the fact that we have this 3-pound hard drive fat cells, water, microamperages of electricity called your brain. Generally speaking, we're all given the same set of, hardware. But what's loaded on this hard drive is a set of equations, a set of commands, a operating system or a mental software, just like a computer, just like Mac or PCs running Windows. The same is very much true for psychology. In fact, computer software was modeled off of human logic. It's a series of if-then equations. And so when you think about psychology, again, why this is a fun little image here. When you first look at this, it looks complex, it looks messy, it looks hard to figure out, but there's a precise equation performing a specific function. There's another one, there's another one. And so we really are just a balance and unbalance of equations. And what these really mean is, our thoughts that boil down to I can, I can't, I will, I won't, up to this point, but not past this point. What you understand, don't understand, all these things that we're constantly computing, how we're making sense of the world, how we're making decisions, all these equations really equate to, what we assign meaning to. There's the data points of life. Things happen, the storms of life happen, or, great things happen. And we assign a meaning, this is good or bad. I'm not sure. Still gathering data here. This is awesome. Oh, this is terrible. We're assigning meanings. And from that is where we get our emotions. So, generally, if the meaning is good, we'll feel good. If the meaning is not so good, we won't feel so good. So based on this emotion and these meanings is what leads to the actions we take or don't take, what we dream of or not dream, because maybe the equations say, don't get your hopes up. Don't dream too big. Don't disappoint yourself. You know what you're capable of. You know what you're not capable of. So all these equations are strategies that naturally follow, where we procrastinate, where we take action now, the standards we set, the compromises we're making, all the results that you can document, that you can see, that you can quantify in your life really comes down to the series of equations that are running, how you are operating within the world, how you're navigating challenges, how you're handling adversity, how you're creating outcomes. All boils down to this software. So first, really, really important point, people, you are code. Do you see people? So again, we're talking about leadership. Do you see the people you're leading as, hard to figure out, messy, unpredictable people, or do you see their equations? And just like Neo in the great movie, The Matrix, he wakes up, he suddenly sees behind the veil, he sees the code that's creating the reality. That's what it's like when you really understand this technology, when you understand these tools and the few that I'm about to give you here, you start to see the hidden underlying code that's driving everything. So these programs contained in the operating system, the mental software that's driving a reality for someone is, even driving the language. You can hear someone's sentence and know exactly where it came from, exactly the program that produced it. So what you must consider, what you must ponder here is, in becoming an extraordinary leader, what can you or would you say or do to unbalance or balance someone's equations? How to inspire someone when they don't believe, how to, produce more when they're not. It's going to come down to your ability to see the software, see the equations, and then take the appropriate actions, say the right things. That's going to, make someone think about something a little bit differently. If you just think about the fact that thoughts are really what's producing a reality, what's producing outcomes and results. Really focusing on the thoughts, the thought patterns of the person you're leading is very, very important. So how do we do that? Well, let's dive in. First of the 3 habits of the most extraordinary leaders. Now, what we see for most, and I'll ask it as a question, when you consider average CEOs versus rockstar CEOs, we've all heard of IQ, the intellectual quotient. Not so many people have heard the term EQ. It's newer, but it's gaining popularity, but stands for emotional quotient. And that's, understanding emotions, understanding your own emotions, understanding others' emotions, your emotional fluency. So some other ways that you may have heard this referred to as rational versus intuitive, or your head versus your heart or gut instinct, doing or action-based versus feeling, knowing versus believing, linear versus mosaic. And in other settings, especially within the relationship arena, we talk about this as masculine versus feminine. Very point A to point B being a masculine drive, feminine being more emotional based, feeling, flowing. So we all have both of these. Some of us are more proficient or more, we'll scale or score higher on an IQ scale versus an EQ. Some of us are more EQ based. We feel, we rely on our emotions more than our logic or our rational thought-based process. So when you think about average versus rockstar CEOs, where would you grade them in terms of how they scale on an IQ versus an EQ scale? Now, if we think about average CEOs, or let's just say, again, because we're talking about average managers as well, or effective managers. Most effective managers, they produce results by, time management and, scheduling and spreadsheets and, allocation of tasks and delegation. And it's a very IQ based strategy and process if you think about it. When you think about the rockstar CEOs, and if you have an example, feel free to type one in, but the rockstar CEOs that can really reach into your chest, inspire, make people better than they are, believe in more, produce, more than they have been. It's not going to really come down to, you'll get some efficiency and productivity around the IQ based practices and strategies, which has more of an emphasis when you really think about how most people arrive at leadership positions. They've become great at their craft. They started off, they became a manager. Maybe they were managing one or a handful of people and moved to, 20. And as they move into up the ladder, leading more people, they've only arrived there, for most people, again, not all, by doing more of these IQ-based practices, time management, spreadsheets, productivity. But the real rock stars, they know their high EQ and high IQ. They know not only how to manage something logically, they understand you. They understand you at a deep level. They understand themselves. They understand what can produce a greater result emotionally. They can empathize. They can relate to you. And you feel that from our great leaders. So in our first big habit, they are utilizing both. So you're going to find rock stars high in both categories. And even if it's higher EQ versus IQ, they're putting more emphasis on the emotional side of things versus the intellectual. So that might be counterintuitive to a lot of you, thinking that maybe I've relied so much on my intellect, how smart I am, my job training, certifications, developing my knowledge within the certain area to, move into a leadership role. Yeah, well, there's a ceiling to that, the ceiling with EQ, it's limitless. I mean, the things that you can do to lead and inspire people when you really understand them at a deeper level will blow you away. So this is a TIY forte. We go very in depth in this and focus a lot on it in our leadership courses. So that's point one, habit number one. Habit number two, the quantum reframe tool. So we all know the question. You've heard it before. Is the glass half full or half empty? Well, it's a trick question because it's always both, isn't it? And the question really is, who are you when you look at the glass? And let me check something. I want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. Feel free to type anything in as I'm going along here. But the quantum glass, and I had a couple of I think it was to my question, who are some great leaders? Martin Luther King Jr., absolutely. George Washington, sure, absolutely. I think he's become more of a mythical kind of person at this point, but did great things as a leader. So glass half full, half empty. It's who are you when you're looking at the glass? It's not about the glass because it's always both. It's which side do you see? Which side do you emotionalize? So this isn't about, hey, we need to, make everyone, take everyone from half empty to half full and just positive thinking. This is not that. It's not just about positive thinking. This is about consciousness. It's seeing both sides. Great leaders see things as they are, not better or worse than they are, and make decisions from there. So there's a tremendous power, though, that you have in your ability to reframe anything. So, while it's not just about positive thinking, if you can take someone from a very half-empty place and get them to see the other side, get them to see a strength in something, get them to see the benefit and the positives of something that maybe didn't work out for them, that they believed was a weakness for them. In the work that I do with my clients, a lot of times the weakness that someone perceives and the story that they tell as a result, is really where contains their greatest strength, because we know that, being challenged, being broken, failing, a great reframe, when you look at failures aren't bad. They're necessary. Failures equal growth. It's how we get better. It's how we improve. We don't grow by not failing. So if you can get someone to see a very authentic, new meaning for a data point that creates power for them, that creates strength for them, is where you really get to tap into that EQ side of things, how you can inspire and get someone to believe that they are more than, what they currently believe they are. And so another big point is that this is not a fake it till you make it tool. And we don't believe in that, because the problem is, if you're just saying something that isn't real and not very true, doesn't hold any weight, well, not only is it not true, you won't believe it, but subconsciously now you're a liar. So that's where things like, affirmations can be actually even detrimental if you're just busy saying, I'm a millionaire, but your bank account doesn't reflect that. Yeah, it doesn't have much power there. It's not real. So it has to be authentic. It has to mean something. And, this tool creates instant power and potentiality. And also, something to be aware of as a leader, when you see someone that uses this tool or reframes to the point of it's a rationalization, where they're just rationalizing things away and not really getting any lessons and growth out of something. Well, I didn't get the job because the boss didn't like me, or I didn't make the football team because the coach didn't like me, or I that marriage failed because it was my spouse's fault. Well, it's probably not all the case, where maybe the deeper truth is, you didn't give it your all. You were lazy. You procrastinated. You weren't fully committed to the relation. Whatever the reason may be, there's value in getting those lessons out of versus just rationalizing it away. Rationalization can be very disempowering. And so your ability to, and bring them back and say, well, let's take a really good look at this. Let's look at both sides. Let's look at half full and half empty. Where's the lessons contained in this situation that we can take and, create value for ourselves. So probably your greatest tool as a leader, if you just do nothing but practice this one tool alone, you'll create some magic with the people that you lead. Last habit that I'm going to give you tonight, leaders absolutely all the time own the weather. Now, what does that mean? It's a military expression. They drill it into elite leadership, all levels of the military, really, that, you get the mission done and bring everyone home. And that's it. Get the mission done, bring everyone home. Now, if you start blaming the weather, because a lot of times, and the military is great about making contingency plans and planning for things like this, but You can't let a storm, a thunderstorm or snow, prevent you from getting food to your troops, from getting someone home, from getting the mission done. There's many variables along the way, along the journey on the mission that can get in the way, weather being one of them. So it's a metaphor, but you have to own everything, absolutely everything, even things that are out of your control, even the weather, because you get the mission done. That's it. You bring everyone home. And when you approach it that way, when you own everything, you succeed more often. You bring more people home alive. When you start to make excuses or you're blaming others, you're not taking full ownership. And there's another great book. I've yet to read it, but I constantly hear great things. I've heard snippets of it, but Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Same concept. They own absolutely everything about their mission. So whether it was an employee or a colleague that screwed something up, hey, you know what? This is on me. I got this. I own that. I didn't give you enough support. I should have saw this coming. This one's on me. And think about coaches of sports teams. Do they blame their players? Very rarely will you hear a coach blame a player, or even a starting, quarterback or captain of a team. Very rarely do you hear them blame others. Now they can get pissed off. They can get, and hey, we didn't play great. It's all on us. Kudos to the other team. They gave it their all. We got to go back to the drawing board. We got to go back to fundamentals and basics. We didn't give enough effort at practice. But it's never a blaming someone else. That's where you really lose a lot of credibility. When you really own everything, including the weather, when everything's on you, when the buck stops with you, people respect that. People look up to that. People will want to follow you and support you and own it with you. Instead of, pointing the fingers game. That's not productive. That only creates tumultuous, it only creates problems and challenges within the team. So, when you believe you're helpless, when you're just saying, oh, I'm doing the best I can, versus absolutely everything falls on you, that's when you're going to really see, just your own personal performance. This isn't even about leadership for others, how you lead your own life. Do you blame other circumstances versus a full-on commitment to an outcome? Nothing gets in the way, and you own everything that gets thrown in front of you, all challenges, all obstacles. You'll see your own performance just start to skyrocket, to see what you're truly capable of. See those moments where, I probably had more in me when I gave up. Own the weather, and you will join the elite crowd of leaders. So that was habit 3. Last couple of things here, and then I'll open it up for questions. If you want to learn more about this, if you really want to understand not only yourself at a far deeper and greater level, really understanding the operating system, the equations that are running, and also able to understand others as well, a great starting point is our Live Life by Design course. So normally $497 for this course, 50% off in the next 24 hours. So it brings it to $247. You're getting $250 off. So Great place to start. That's all self-paced. You get access into our members site on the on our website. Other courses are included with that. We have specific courses focusing on leadership, relationships, health. More courses will be added throughout, but you'll have lifetime access to that. This is a great starting point to go through this process of transforming, upgrading your mental software, understanding yourself far greater than you have ever understood before, knowing the tools. When I say, how do we unbalance and balance these equations? What tool would I use to do that? There's over 70 tools in that course alone that you're going to know how to use with others. So great starting point. And if you want to explore other programs, there's one-on-one coaching, there's leadership courses, there's other small group programs. There's a link on our website. It's theinevitableyou.com. You can schedule a consultation with me. There's a scheduling app on the website right there. Find a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk. I'll give you some more information on what would be the best program for you.